Vikram Digwa, 23, sentenced to life with a minimum term of 21 years for murder. 18-year-old Henry Nowack laid badly injured while Victor's brother called the police in the UK. Henry was walking home from a bar with some friends. He hadn't even had a drink. His blood alcohol content was 0. And this guy, Victor, a foreigner, a Muslim, a scuzlim, comes running out with a knife and stabs Henry for absolutely no reason whatsoever, except that he was just walking home. They have finally released the body cam footage, and it's horrific. I'm going to let you see it, but if you have little kids sitting right there, you might want to...
This was the moment officers from Hampshire Police arrived looking for 18-year-old student Henry Nowack. A phone call made to police claimed Vikram Digwa, seen here, had been the victim of a racist attack.
Someone flagged these down.
And Henry Nowack, the man on the floor, was the alleged aggressor. But unknown to officers, that claim was untrue. And the teenager on the ground, Henry Nowack, had been stabbed by the man claiming to be the victim. This is what happened next.
What's happened to you, right? Been stabbed. You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
After telling officers he was stabbed, Henry Nowack was placed in handcuffs. He died later that night. 9 times Henry Nowack told officers that he could not breathe.
Hand in the cuff, mate.
The student said multiple times that he had been stabbed. Henry's parents said their son died in an inhumane and degrading manner and called for the police to answer questions. This was their son the night of the attack. There is now an investigation into the officers who dismissed him and failed to recognize his distress. Henry's killer Vikram Digwa must now serve a minimum of 21 years behind bars for taking the life of a teenager with a Sikh ceremonial knife. And now, one man's action has had consequences for his community and been seized by politicians who declared this a scandal.
Now, let's get something straight. Welcome to God, Guns, and Dogs. I'm glad you could join me today. Please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps with the algorithm. Say hi, Frankie. Say hi. Hi. Hi, baby. Now, let's get something straight. Right out of the gate, people. This story, it's not complicated, but the way people are talking about it is doing that very modern thing where everyone pretends to be shocked while secretly auditioning for the loudest possible reaction. Sir Keir Starmer says Elon Musk is whipping up division over the Henry Nowack case, and Musk is doing what Musk does best, throwing gasoline on a public fire and acting surprised when everyone smells smoke. Now, if you followed politics for more than 5 minutes, you already know the script. A tragedy happens, people get angry, and the public, they want answers. The political class wants calm, and the billionaire class with the megaphone decides the whole thing needs a giant vibrating opinion blast from orbit, and then everyone pretends the real scandal is the tone and not the mess itself. Say hi. And that's where the story gets interesting, because the public is not reacting to a vacuum. There's body cam footage, there's a murder conviction, and there are claims about police treatment at the scene, and there's a very real family trying to grieve, while political idiots turn their nightmare into content. So yes, the outrage machine is ugly, but it's not operating in a clean room either. Here's the core fact pattern. Henry Nowack, an 18-year-old student, was killed. And Vikram Digwa was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 21 years for murder. BBC reporting and related clips say body cam footage showed Nowack being restrained by police while badly injured. He was stabbed 5 times, with the audio indicating he repeatedly said that he could not breathe. That's the kind of detail that detonates public confidence, and not because the public is stupid. It's because the public can see the moral problem without needing a graduate seminar to explain it. When a wounded teenager is lying there in distress and the optics look like institutional failure, is not going to clap politely and ask for a PowerPoint. And that's before we even get to the allegations and the political framing around the case. According to the coverage, the discussion has included claims that police decision-making may have been affected by the attacker's false allegations, and that has fed the sense that this whole thing is not just tragic, but infuriatingly botched up. And that's where anger comes from, not from propaganda, but from the suspicion that common sense was absent when it mattered most. Starmer's message is basically stop turning this into a political cage match and stop using the tragedy to pump division. On paper, that's a sensible message, but in practice, it also sounds like the exact line every government says when it wants the public to stay calm and shut up, while the story just keeps getting uglier and uglier. He said Britain should be reasonable, tolerant, and he pushed back on Musk's involvement as interference in British politics. That's a fine sentiment, except it lands differently when people already feel the state has been slow, defensive, or evasive about the facts. Be calm is a lot easier to say when you're not the one staring at the footage and trying to reconcile with your trust in institutions. And that's the political trap here. If Starmer says nothing, he looks weak, which he is. And if he says too much, he looks like he's managing optics instead of addressing the substance. If he criticizes Musk, he risks feeding the whole political circus. And if he doesn't, Musk gets to dominate the conversation like a man kicking over a restaurant table and claiming he's improving the ambiance. So yes, Starmer is trying to contain the blast radius, but containment is not the same thing as resolution. Musk, meanwhile, is doing his usual thing, taking a volatile public issue and turning it into a meme-powered culture war grenade. The reporting says that he posted about the case in a way that framed it as a wider symbol of Western decline, police bias, and institutional cowardice. That is not an argument so much as a flamethrower with punctuation. And to be fair, this is why Musk remains effective. He does not speak like a statesman. He speaks like a permanent online pileup. That makes him influential because he sounds unscripted, and in the current media environment, unscripted often passes for truth, even when it's really just adrenaline with Wi-Fi. But here's the part his defenders always skip. Being right about the problem does not make every delivery wise, responsible, or truthful. You can identify institutional failure and still exploit it like a carnival barker. Frankie, what are you doing? Frankie, what are you doing, buddy? You can point at a real wound and still keep poking it because the pain drives engagement. And that's not courage. That's monetized agitation. And if you think that's an exaggeration, look at how fast these stories metastasize online. One clip becomes a thesis, one thesis becomes a movement, one movement becomes 100 people who've read exactly one paragraph and now speak with the confidence in constitutional scholars and forensic pathologists combined. The media has its own role in this awful mess because every outlet knows exactly what kind of story this is. It's tragic, emotional, politically combustible, and tailor-made for viral outrage. The result is very predictable. The public gets fragments of the truth, the platform gets traffic, and the story becomes a referendum on whoever yells the loudest. That means nuance gets crushed between two fake certainties. On one side, you have people treating any criticism of police or institutions as proof of systemic rot. And on the other side, you have people treating any outrage over the handling of this case as cynical manipulation by political opportunists. Both camps can sound morally certain while missing the actual point. If the facts are ugly, the facts are just ugly. And saying so should not require team jerseys. The media's weakness is not that it reports conflict. Conflict is the story. The weakness is that it often encourages outrage as a substitute for understanding. And that's how a real death becomes a content arena. That's how grief becomes political ammunition and trust. And that's how the public gets trained to react before it's fully absorbed what even really happened. What makes this story so volatile is that it hits several nerves all at once. Crime, policing, race, social media, billionaire influence, and government credibility. You can't design a more combustible set of ingredients if you tried. Every group sees a different villain, and every faction thinks the other side is performing morality instead of engaging reality. Some people see a tragic murder and a justice system that needs scrutiny. Others see a broad ideological fight over immigration, policing, and whether institutions bend too easily under political pressure. What's the matter, Frankie? Oh, my baby. Oh, my baby. Say bye. Bye. Say bye. Say bye. Others see a broader ideological fight over immigration, policing, and whether institutions bend too easily under political pressure. Still, others see just another example of elites fighting in public, while ordinary people are told to be patient, restrained, and grateful just for the privilege of being ignored. And that's why people are so angry, not just because of the case, but because the entire ecosystem around it feels completely rotten. Everyone has a microphone. Nobody has any shame, and every emotional reaction is immediately repackaged into a worldview. And if you strip away the posturing, the story is really about trust. Trust in police, trust in politicians, trust in platforms, and trust that a human tragedy won't be turned into a cheap ideological punch-up within 12 minutes of the facts hitting the timeline. That trust is already thin, and stories like this shred it even further. Now, Starmer wants to protect social order and avoid escalation. Musk, he wants to dominate. And Musk, he says what others are too timid to say. The public, meanwhile, wants two things that rarely coexist anymore: accountability and honesty. Instead, it gets positioning, spin, and people pretending their outrage is principled when it's often just tribal. So here's the blunt truth, folks. If institutions want people to stop lashing out online, they need to behave in a way that doesn't invite it. And if influencers want to act responsible and be good truth tellers, they should stop tossing lit matches into every grievance that they can find. Very simple, extremely difficult apparently, though. This is not a clean morality play where the good people are calm and the bad people are loud. It's a mess of power, grief, optics, and opportunism. And the ugliness is distributed all the way around. And that's what makes it such a perfect modern story. Everybody can find something true to be angry about and something dishonest to perform. The state wants restraint. The billionaire wants fire. The public, we want answers. And the dead, they don't get to vote on how their story even gets used. That last part should embarrass more people than it does. So no, the real issue is not the people are too emotional. The real issue is that the entire system is so addicted to spectacle that even a death becomes a content war. And until that changes, we're going to keep having the same stupid, profitable, morally exhausted argument on repeat. That video is horrific, and I cannot believe that they sat there and let that boy die like that. That just shows you where humanity is headed, and these police were instructed to turn on their own people.
Diversity and inclusion, and in claims that ethnic minorities receive preferential treatment from the police.
This is two-tier Britain, and I'm totally opposed to it. I'm opposed to DEI, I'm opposed to positive discrimination. I believe if we're going to live in a free and fair country, everybody must be judged equally on their merits.
Today, the far-right's leader Tommy Robinson rallied troops outside Southampton police station, declaring institutional bias. But claims of two-tier policing in favour of minorities clash with numerous government reports, who are now being asked to review rules around ceremonial weapons. As division widens, the consensus is over the concern on police conduct. Of the 4 officers at the scene, 3 are still serving and not subject to any restrictions. And now another trial looms for Henry Nowack's killer. Today, Vikram Digwa was back in court facing additional charges of possession of an offensive weapon. He appeared in court alongside Moga Singh and Gurpreet Digwa. Vikram Digwa will appear before the magistrate's court again on June 9th. He, his father and brother are yet to enter a plea.
Well, our senior political correspondent Paul McNamara is in Westminster now. Paul, what have MPs been saying about all this?
Yeah, well, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, appeared to give a statement in Commons earlier on. There were questions and answers after that. As Simeon mentioned, though, there is an investigation into Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary's handling of this case. That investigation has been conducted by the IOPC, the Independent Office for Police Conduct. And effectively, that gave the Home Secretary cover to not delve into the details of this case. That's on hold until after that investigation is concluded. But there were two very notable elements to the arguments this afternoon, two arguments that were repeated. Firstly, accusations of so-called two-tier policing, and second of all, condemnation of any politicising of this case. Shaban Mahmood saying, quote, "We must condemn those who seek personal political profit from a tragedy." That sentiment was echoed by the Lib Dems and from various others. On the issue of two-tier policing, the Conservatives' Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp brought up this document. It's guidance, it's the police anti-racism commitment, and under the section, our commitment to racial equity means, there's this line, it said, "It does not mean treating everyone the same or being colourblind." The Conservatives saying that effectively hardwires in two-tier treatment. This is what Chris Philp had to say, followed by the Home Secretary's response.
The dangerous ideology of so-called anti-racism, allowing people to be treated differently based on race, must end. Extreme activists have hijacked the policy-making process, and this is where it has led. It has no place in policing, it has no place anywhere. So does the Home Secretary agree that the so-called police anti-racism commitment must urgently be withdrawn?
And this government will always ensure that in fulfilling their sacred duties to keep our communities safe, that the police always act without fear and favour and always ensure that every citizen is treated equally. But I'm sure he wouldn't want to do down or ignore historic and legitimate concerns that there have been from some communities about institutional racism as well as differential treatment.
So the Home Secretary there saying, look, there have been times in the not too distant past where the police have failed some communities, but she came back to this line and repeated variations of it time and again, quote, "All are equal before the law. The police must always act without fear or favour towards any one group." Tonight, I understand from sources close to the Home Secretary that she considers the wording in this document to be, quote, "clumsy," and that, I understand from sources close to Home Secretary, the National Police Chief Council are now reviewing the wording to ensure that there is no ambiguity and so that everyone is equal in the eyes of the law.
Paul in Westminster, thank you very much indeed. Well, earlier I spoke to Reform UK's Home Affairs spokesperson, Zia Youssef. First, I asked him what he thought that Nigel Farage meant when he said that people should respond with pure cold rage to the treatment of Henry Nowack.
I think it's a reflection of the horror of poor Henry's murder and the manner in which it happened. And obviously anyone who has seen that footage cannot help but be moved. And so what does it tell us about this country? That so powerful is the accusation of racism now that one can stab repeatedly somebody and have the police handcuff them. That is why we are furious.
But the response from Nigel Farage after this terrible tragedy is precisely what the family of the victim don't want. The father of Henry has said very clearly yesterday, and you've heard the tape, we've all heard the tape, don't make this about Sikhism, don't make this about racism. This is about knife crime, and this is about a particular murder case. You're trying to do exactly what he doesn't want you to do.
But my heart goes out to him and to the whole family. I can only imagine what they are going through. But I can only speak for how I felt having watched that footage, and I know how Nigel felt having watched that footage, and I've spoken to so many serving police officers who have told me the biggest fear police have, that they have, is an accusation of racism. It is career-ending. Go and look at Hampshire Police's website as we speak. It is still up. Their race action plan that was put in place as a result of what happened with George Floyd in America, that trains the police to respond differently depending on whether an accusation of racism has been made. And I'm afraid no one is going to guilt trip us into not making these arguments. I'm afraid we now do live in a country where anti-white racism is structurally embedded in many of our great institutions, including the police.
But in this particular case, which is so tragic and may at the end of the day be so unique, Is it not wrong to use it as an example of a broader trend? This is precisely what the father of the victim has warned against.
There are many, many examples of two-tier policing and justice in this country. And with regard to this case, we can talk about the fact that in this country,
two-tier policing that leads to murder, that leads to someone dying.
If you are of a certain religion, you get to carry a deadly weapon around in public. And when I say that there is structural two-tier policing and justice inside our system, that is a perfect example, and it is unacceptable. I don't care what religion you are, but you must not be allowed to carry a deadly weapon in public.
Okay.
I sure hope that doesn't happen here. But the 14th Amendment needs to be amended. No more foreigners in our governments. No more foreigners running for mayors, for governors, none of that. No Congress, no Senate, no police, no judges. Foreigners cannot be ruling over Americans. They hate us. And every time a foreigner gets into any type of power, look at Scam Donnie, and then you've got them, the foreigners and the scuzlims that want to take over our country and burn it down. And then you've got your white liberals, which is the commies, the women that wear no makeup and have really pointy noses. They all look the same. They look like maidens from the 1800s. They need a bonnet on their head. They look like Quakers, except their hair's down. They look ugly, like that mayor of Seattle. They look like her. And the one in Virginia, Scam Burger. So I don't even think women should really be in politics, honestly, if you want to know the truth. I think women are too emotional, and I think men should run our country, honestly. And, that's the way I see it, and I don't feel shy admitting that. Women are just too emotional to be in positions of power, like having nuclear weapons at their fingertips. God bless Henry Nowack and to his family. And I'm going to be doing another video here coming up on Bill Scumbag Gates that needs to go to prison, and he needs to get the hell out of anything to do with the public, which he's not doing, and it's not good. Real bad. All right, you guys, please hit like and subscribe. Helps with the algorithm. And remember, no matter what life throws your way, you still have potential. So, God bless you. And God bless America.